All right, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to our class on Yalkut Yosef. We are now dealing with the halachot of borer, sifting or separating bad from good. Last time we spoke about the main three elements that a person needs to know whenever he wants to separate good from bad or bad from good. There are three things that you need to do. We called it ochel, bayad, umiyad. Ochel meaning you have to separate the good from the bad. You cannot separate the bad from the good. That's ochel. Ochel me'apsolet v'lo apsolet me'ochel. Bayad meaning in your hand. A fork and a spoon may be also considered a hand, but not with a special tool that does the sifting. Like in the Mishkan when they would sift the flour, right? There was a special tool for it, that would be a problem. And miyad lealta, which means in order to eat it right away in the next meal or so, but not to do it for tonight's meal or something like that. That would be a problem. Okay, so now we are going to deal with problems in your plate. All right. So maybe before that, there's the Taz, the Turei Zahav, one of the Mefarshim on the Shulchan Aruch. Welcome, Giacomo Baruch Haba. The Taz says that if I have from the same type of food, like for example, apples, I have big apples and I have small apples, or I have big pieces of meat and small pieces of meat in a bowl, and I want to separate them. I want to make a pot of small apples and big apples, or whatever it is. Is that considering separating, sifting, borer? Or do we say, no, it's not borer because at the end of the day, all these guys are apples or all these guys are pieces of meat? So the Taz forbids to separate gedolim miktanim. He says that even if it's the same species, same mean, but it's you're separating gadol mikatan, it's considered a problem. But la halacha, we don't hold like the Taz. We hold that since it's the same thing, a big apple and a small apple, it's not considering borer on Shabbat, and you will be allowed to separate it unless it's so small that for you it's garbage, right? Like you have certain nuts or whatever it is, and the real small ones, you don't want them in the plate because they're not worthy of eating, and you take them out. Then it's already garbage. So by separating that, that would be a problem. Also, if you have, let's say, a piece of fish that you're eating, right? And one part of the piece got burnt, the edge of the fish. So I want to cut it out of my plate, put it somewhere else. You'd say it's a fish. I'm able to eat it. No, but because it's burnt and for you it's garbage, then you cannot do the separating that we spoke about. You're allowed to cut it off so that you could eat the fish and leave it in your plate. But you cannot now, shelo b'derech achila, let's say in the central plate, it's not in your plate, in the central plate, before you serve, you want to cut off the bad pieces of the fish and only put the good ones in for everybody. You're basically doing a borer that's not le'altar, that's not being eaten right away. In your plate, when you're eating it right away, it would be easier. All right. So this was the next topic, actually. Rakuv. If you have a rotten fruit or something like that, even if it's the same species, you have apples, one of them is rotten, you want to take the rotten apple out of the pile, that would be forbidden. The right way to do it would be to pour out all the apples, and once they're all out, take the bad one, throw it in the garbage, and then put all the good ones back into the plate, or just remove all the good ones into a good plate. But you cannot just choose and take out what is rotten because it doesn't answer one of the three criterias. It does answer bayad, doing it in your hand. It does answer miyad, you're doing it right away so that people could eat. But it doesn't answer the criteria of tov mira. You have to take out the good and not the bad. If you're taking out the bad, that would be a problem. If I have a piece of chicken, as you know, we have the chicken, the bone of the chicken, the bottom of it is called baby chicken, pargit, it's called in Hebrew. That's the softer part, and they're sold separately. So if I have a piece of chicken like that, or a chicken breast from the pargit, am I allowed now to come and create a separation between them, or is that considered borer? So halacha is, even though they are called two different types of meat, this is chicken breast and this is pargit, this is baby chicken, still they're both chicken. And since it's the same animal, the same meat, he says that that won't be a problem. You can make that separation. It's the same meat. It's not considered borer. But of course, if you have a mixture of beef and chicken within your plate and you want to create separation between them, then we are going to say that it is borer because it's two different types, right? Now, interesting, same item, same food, two chickens, however, still separating one from the other is going to be borer, is going to be separating. How could that
Wait,
be?
wait, Ziv.
Yes.
Sorry, can I ask a question about the separating the meat and the chicken?
Yes, בכבוד.
So let's say I like to eat first the chicken and then the beef. I like to eat both of them. It's not
Mhm.
like I'm pushing it away and I don't want to eat it. You know what I mean? Can I do it separate it like that just for because it's easier for me to distinguish and then you know what I mean? I eat one
I
and then
hear
the
what you're
other or
saying.
no?
It's a good question. There is a rabbi called the Rav Abulafia, and we use his kula. His kula is that anything that is done within your plate is not considered boil. You understand what I'm saying? If you want to do that in the central plate, I don't know to say that that's so simple. But in your plate, there's no borer because it's derech achila. You're about to eat it. In the central plate, I would say it's more problematic. But within your plate, unless everybody agrees that they're both food, I think that what you're talking about right now is the case that we brought here is if, let's say, a person considers the red meat as no, I don't eat red meat. So he's separating them. But with you, since they're both food, we've learned in the past that there's a solution also. If I don't like the red meat, I'm allowed to take it out of my plate and put it into someone else's plate that he is going to eat. So if you're going to eat it as well, I think that we could also rely on that and say, well, I'm moving it into my plate. If I'm allowed to move it into someone else's plate that he's going to eat, I'll move it into mine. But if you are creating a separation, I would try to eat from it al right away, not leave it laying there, for later, so that you have a few kulot. You have Rabbi Abulafia. As I said, when you learn halachot of Borer, it's probably the most complicated halachot regarding Shabbat. So we use a lot of tzirufim, a lot of different opinions to how you're allowed to move one thing from the other. One of them is if it was in the same plate. Another one is that if it's not really garbage, someone else is going to eat it, or in your case, you're even going to eat it. But it's also better if you do le'altar, miyad, eat it right away, don't leave it for later, then you would be covered from many different directions.
This is also considered ochel beyad
So
miyad, right?
it is or isn't, you're saying?
It is, right?
So miyad really means that you separate it and you're eating it. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, I
But
see, I see.
over here, you're separating and you're going to eat all the chicken first, and then you're going to get to that. So it's not
Got
a
it.
classic miyad, but it has some sort of element of miyad. So that's why I also liked you to add, the other two elements. The more, generally you have who to rely on if you do that. But because we have a lot of sfekot when it comes to boil, we try, that's the shita of Rav Ovadia, to be mitzaref, to add as many opinions as we can that are lenient. And that's why these halachot are very complicated. You have to know them. So at the end, Bezrat Hashem, I'm going to give you a list that I prepared that shows us all the different tzirufim, all the different opinions that allow us to use. And if we have at least two of those, then we're going to be okay to do the borel. So we'll see, Bezrat Hashem. We'll get there step by step.
Thank you.
So my question now was, if I have two of the same item exactly, how could it be that if I separate them, I did a borel? And the answer is, if I have a fried chicken and a roasted chicken, it's the same piece of meat. One is fried, one is roasted. It's considered two minim. Ah, but it's the same animal. Yeah, but if you cooked it differently, one was fried, one was roasted, it's considered two minim already, and then you can't separate them. All right. He also says that I guess there's something called like a sour prune and a sweet prune. And he says this, I don't know exactly, maybe you guys know, unless he's talking about the the green ones. I don't know, sour prune and a sweet prune. But he says even though they're both prunes, they still will be considered as two different minim. Okay. Now what happens? This is a very classic case. Something here. Very classic case of sifting in your tea, right? I put a sifter and then I put all the tea leaves on top of that, and then I pour the water into that. Am I considered making a borel? I put green leaves. I like to have green leaves on Shabbat. I put them inside a sifter. I put that on top of my cup. Or there are even these special things that they're like a bag that you put inside of it all the leaves, and then it's a metal bag, and then you leave it in your cup and you pour in. Are you doing sifting? Because basically you're letting the water come in, but you're preventing the leaves from coming out through that sifter. Would it be borer or not? Rav Ovadia brings a beautiful kula here to allow us to use these sifting mechanisms on Shabbat. And he says that since someone is not makpid, he's not so strict if a little bit of the leaves will go into his cup, what's going to happen? He's going to a little bit spit it out, but he's not so makpid. If it's going to go into his cup, it's not going to change his world right now. So it's not considered really that he's makpid. It's not like someone that says, no, I don't eat peas in my rice, and he takes out all the peas, and if he tastes one, he's going to spit it. No, this is a tea. He's not makpid, he says. And therefore, since he's not makpid, it's not a full sift and it would be okay. This is relevant to many places. Another place, I don't know how the water systems here work, but in Israel, every faucet has to have some sort of sifter on it. It's built in. You buy the faucets in Israel, it's built in so that the stream of the water, A, won't be so strong. It lowers the water because Israel tries to preserve the water. We don't have so much water. And also because it sifts through, like, let's say, avnit, stone, and sand, and stuff like that. So would that be considered sifting? Obviously, if they put it there, there's a reason for it, and people want it there. And he says, let's just do mute here. And he says that if you do that, it's okay. Why is it okay? For the same reason we just mentioned with the tea, which is because the person is not makpid. If you are not makpid, what happens if now I'm going to drink from the faucet without that sifter? Am I going to go spit it out, disgusting? No, it's okay. I drink from it. Okay, this is a big kula also for water coolers. A guy goes to a water cooler. The water cooler has a mechanism where it sifts the bad and leaves you the good. Can I use it on Shabbat? I'm separating the bad from the good. Let's assume that I'm separating the bad from the good. One may say, no, I'm separating the good. There's a she'ela. When you use something that sifts, what is being sifted, the good or the bad? I use a salt shaker and I want all the big chunks, or there's rice in there. I want it to stay inside and I want the salt to come out. Am I sifting the salt out or am I sifting the rice in? You understand? There's a big she'ela. It's not so clear what is being sifted and what is not. Again, in these cases, that's why we like to use another kula. The kula and the salt shaker would be that I'm not really trying to sift. My purpose is just to create a nice separation of the salt on the food, and therefore I don't care so much for the rice inside. For each case, we have to know what is the solution. So hopefully, slowly we'll get to it. But back to the water cooler, I'll be allowed to use that water cooler on Shabbat. Why? Because says Rav Yitzchak Yosef, my opinion is not about the sifting right now. Why am I using this water cooler? Because I want to drink cold water. If you go to a regular faucet that you put in a special mechanism that it's, let's say you have these water pitchers that have a kind of filter inside of it, and you pour the water on top and it starts dripping on Shabbat. That's a problem because you care for the sifting. Why are you pouring it into that? You want to do sifting. Since you care for the sifting, that would be a problem. So don't use those on Shabbat. But if it's built into your faucet, there's many reasons to be lenient, especially if you have a reverse osmosis, which it has like a can on the bottom and it stores up to 18 liters in that can. And then every time you pull out sifted water from that, new water comes in and gets sifted. But you don't really care about what's above the 18 liters. You already have your 18 liters. That's what you want. So your mind is not about the new water that's coming in being sifted, and that is allowed. And that's one of the kulas that Rav Yitzchak Yosef uses for the water cooler as well. When I use the water cooler, am I thinking, oh, I want to sift the new water that's coming in? No, I just want to drink cold water. So we use the element of what your mind is thinking as well. Famous case in halacha, someone discussed what happens if a fly falls into my cup of tea, cup of water, cup of drink? Now, I'm not talking about people that are istenistim. According to halacha, there's someone called the istenist that he's a clean freak, and if a fly fell into his drink, he will never touch that. So no question, he'll just throw out the cup. But what if a guy has something valuable in there? He has a good wine, a good tequila, a good something that he doesn't want to waste, and he doesn't mind taking out the fly and drinking that cup. Am I allowed to do that? Is that a thing that is permitted? Or perhaps we're going to say, no, that's a problem. Let me make my screen a little bigger so I see you all better. Here we go. Oh, Baruch Hashem. So, would that be allowed or would that not be allowed? So, this is the case. Min hadin, says Yalkut Yosef, en brera belach. When it comes to liquids, there's no borer when I separate solid from liquids. All right. If I have, according to this opinion, if I have a cup filled with pickles and the pickle water, I'll be allowed to pour out the pickle water because there's no sifting when it comes to solid and liquids. There's no borer. And therefore, he says, you will be allowed to take out the fly. But he says, since it's not clear what if the halacha is really like that or not, better to be careful. And when you take out the fly from the cup, and again, this is not a requirement, but he says it's better to do it. Take it out with a little of the liquid, a little of the wine, the tequila, the water, whatever it is, so that when you do that, now you're definitely not doing boil. It's like when you take out the peas with the rice, you take it with a little bit of the rice as well. We learned that that's okay because I'm taking out good and bad. Same thing with the water. If you want to be extra careful, you could do the good and bad. But even if you just knocked out the fly itself, it'll already be okay. Next topic he brings is taking meat or fish out of a soup. I don't want to eat the meat or the fish. Can I take them out of the soup? So what did we just learn? That if I'm separating solids from liquid, is there borer or no? We learned that there's no borer. It's allowed. When is it a problem? When they're very small. When the pieces, if it gives an example of small vegetables, it's like a vegetable soup. I'm not going to say over here, oh, the vegetables are solid and the water is liquid. I'm allowed to take them out. Because once he says, sheesh torach beotzaotam, which means it's a little difficult to remove those vegetables. It's not like a piece of chicken, you caught it, you took it out. They're already small. He says, "Kshesh torach," when there's difficulty into removing them, then it's considered that they are mixed, and if you do that, that would be a borer. So if you have like very small vegetables and you want to take them out, it would be a problem to just take them out. But again, if you still want to do that, what would our solution be? What did we learn? We take out a little bit of the liquid with it. Once you do that, then you're all set. There's no boil because you're separating good and bad together outside of the pile of food that you're eating from. I'm eating now a fruit, an apple, and I see that it has that area that has a little bit of hole and got a little bit of a brownish color, and I wanted to just chop that area off and eat the rest of the apple. Is that okay? Is that mutar or is that borer? So as we learned, if you are doing something b'derech achila, which means in the normal way that I'm eating, then it would be mutar. So I'm eating the apple right now and I see that part, I could cut it off and keep on eating the apple. But if I'm organizing a fruit platter for people and I want to, place the fruits in and I say, oh, this apple has a bad part, let me just chop off the bad part and put it in and serve it to everybody, then it's already not le'altar. It's not derech achila. It's a little bit with a stall until it goes into the mouth, then that would be a problem. What about peeling vegetables? For example, he says, onion. I want to peel an onion for the meal. He says, if you're peeling it for tonight's meal, that's already considered lo le'altar. You're doing a borer, but when is a borer allowed? When it's done right away. So if you're going to peel something like an onion, and I'm specifically saying like an onion because the peel is not edible. When you're peeling a cucumber, it's much easier because even though first of all, some people eat the peel. Second, even if you want to say that they don't eat the peel, but whenever you're going to peel a cucumber, you're always also going to peel a little bit of the meat of the fruit. Same thing with the apple. And since that happens, it's like the case that we brought where I'm separating good from bad, but I'm also separating it with a little bit of I'm taking out the bad, but I'm also taking out good. If I do both together, so with the cucumber that you're peeling, we're soon going to discuss if I'm even allowed to use a peel or I can just use a knife on Shabbat. What would be the din of that? But in the classic case of an onion, where the peel is separated from the juice of the fruit, when you're peeling an onion, you're not peeling necessarily a part of the fruit or the vegetable. So that you can only do when it's right away for the next meal that you're about to eat, but you can't do it for a later meal. So, what do you think, guys? Can I use a peeler? Johnny, sorry, Baruch haba, I didn't notice you joined us. Can I use a peeler, a special one, kolfan it's called, like you peel the potatoes, or do I have to use my knife on Shabbat? So you may ask, why no? What's the difference between that thing and a knife? What's the difference between using a knife and using a peeler? At the end of the day, I'm removing the bad. And the answer is that you're allowed to use that peeler on Shabbat. Why? Because a kli, remember we learned that we need three requirements. One of them is using your hand. We said that the fork and the spoon is considered a hand, but you cannot use a special vessel like a sifter that is used for flour or something like that. You cannot use something like that because it's a kli meyuchad lebrira. It's a special kli that is used to sift. So maybe you could say this peeler is a special kli to take out peels. Peels, some people don't eat it. But the answer is, since it's also used to peel something like a cucumber or like an apple, and in that case, some of the good also comes out, so we cannot call a peeler kli miyuchad lebrira. It's a special kli that sifts all the good from the bad. No, it takes some of the good also out of it when it peels, as opposed to that sifter that just leaves all the brown on top and takes all the good flour on the bottom. It's not a kli miyuchad lebrira because it doesn't do borer 100%. It also removes some of the good with it, and therefore I will be allowed to use it on Shabbat. Says the Yalkut Yosef, והמחמיר תבוא עליו ברכה, which means if you want to be strict, God bless you. Fantastic. But we're not going to require that from you. La halacha, it is muta. Last week, Igal asked us about kelim or clothing. Is there borer in that? And that's the next topic of the Yalkut Yosef. And he says that there is definitely borer with kelim, with vessels and with clothing. So when you see a few together and you want to separate them, always pull out the shirt that you want. Or if you have a pile and you want to wear a shirt, take the shirt that you want. Don't remove all the shirts that you don't want. It's the same din. It's the same idea of borer. All right. So now, a little bit of a summary. So, what we had so far with a little bit of additions and special cases. Do we have time? We have time, Bezrat Hashem. Special cases that I think are everyday cases. Rav Budbud, the brother-in-law of Yalkut Yosef, I heard this in his shurim and I thought that it would be very helpful to bring. So, first of all, peeling an egg. Is that okay on Shabbat? Obviously, if we're eating it today, it is okay. But when we do the calculation, we may come to a problem. When I'm peeling the egg, I'm only removing bad. No good is coming out of the egg when I'm peeling it, right? Unless you're a very bad peeler, but or the egg is problematic. But usually the peel just comes off and the food stays in the middle. So he says that that would be allowed to do because that's the only way that you could get to the egg. There's no other way to get to eat the food other than peeling it, and it's the way of eating it. It's a derech achila, so of course you will be allowed to peel the egg and to eat it, even though you're only taking out the bad. Also, peeling a chicken skin off a chicken, says the Yalkut Yosef, that it's the same din. The only way to get to the chicken is if I peel off the skin, and therefore, of course, I'm allowed to do that. The Chazon Ish is going to be strict. We don't follow the Chazon Ish over here. The Yalkut Yosef doesn't follow the Chazon Ish, but he says the Chazon Ish is very strict, and he holds that if you want to eat a chicken that has skin, you have to slowly remove all the meat and eat the meat and leave the skin where it is, because he's strict even on that. But we don't follow this opinion, since the derech achila, the way to get to the meat, is by removing the skin. You're going to say some people eat the skin. Most people don't eat the skin. It's not considered necessarily healthy. When we were kids, a lot of people ate the skin, me myself as well. But now, most people don't eat the skins anymore. And because of that, it would be considered garbage. But we are allowed to do it because that's the way for us to get, just like with the egg. That's the way for me to get inside to the chicken, and it's mutar. Now I have a watermelon, and I take it and I see it has tons of seeds in it, and I want to eat it. The Ben Ish Chai discusses, am I allowed to shake the watermelon so that all the seeds fall out so that I could eat? What would be the problem? Clear. I'm removing the bad. I'm not removing the good. Is that borer or is that not borer? Ben Ish Chai says, I allow you to do it, but only do it with a piece of watermelon that was in your plate. Again, shake it in your plate. Why? Because we rely on the Rav Abulafia that says that borer in your plate is not borer. But he says, but in the main dish, where you're slicing the big pieces and put it in the middle, oh, before I serve this main dish of watermelon, let me take each one and shake out all the bits. That's already a sul, because it's not derech achila. It's not being done in the way of eating. It's only going to be eaten later, and that would be a problem. All right. Klipat shaked. Some people do not like to eat the peel of an almond, right? So he says, is he allowed to take off the peel? And the answer would be same thing as the egg. Since for him it's the way to get to the almond because he doesn't like the cover. It's like an egg. I want to eat the meat. I have to do it by peeling. So you would be allowed to do the same as well. Cherry tomatoes. I'm eating a tomato and I see that it has this green leaf on top. That's how it grew in the ground, and they like to show me that it's, you know, still fresh. Can I pull out that green, or is it considered borer because that's not edible? I'm only eating the tomato. Would that be a problem? So over here, the Chazon Ish that is strict would tell you cut off the bottom part and take the good and eat the good. But it's okay. According to Yalkut Yosef, you are allowed to cut that thing out. Since it's good to be strict, but know that it's a strictness. You have what to rely on to just pull out the green and eat it. Now to a very interesting case, and I asked you this in our chat regarding tuna fish, but it's also relevant to yogurt. Someone opens a yogurt or opens a tuna can, and he sees on top that there's a lot of oil floating. Now he doesn't want the oil, he wants to get to the tuna. Will he be allowed to pour out the oil, or in the yogurt? There's a layer of liquid that you don't want. You want to have the yogurt, so you pour out. Is that a problem? Because you're taking out the bad, obviously, you're not taking out the good. So the halacha is according to what we learned today. Is there borer when it comes to separating solids from liquid? The answer is no. And therefore, I will be allowed to pour out the oil, and I will be allowed to pour out the liquid. But, and this, you have to notice this point, we mentioned with taking little vegetables out of the soup, that even though it's solid, if it requires a little ma'amatz, a little work, then it's asur. It's only considered not sifting when it's easily sifted. So what do the poskim say? Rav Budbul says that when you are taking out the tuna and pouring out the oil, pour out the oil, but don't wait until you're at the point where, okay, the oil stopped pouring and now you're trying to get out the last drips. That's already like a toach. It's like you're having to do something. It's the last few drops there already considered mixed within the tuna. Same thing with the yogurt. You're going to pour out right away. A lot of the liquid will pour, and then you get to a gray area where some is coming out, but some is coming out. Almost the yogurt is coming out. This is when you get to that area, better to stop because that may be considered already a mixture. And now that you're taking it out, you're doing the borer. Again, another way to do it would be just to take with your spoon a little bit of the yogurt with that remaining liquid that bothers you. But minadin, the majority of the liquid, no problem to pour out. And same thing with the tuna. All right. Do we have time for one more? No, let's just say a comment on this. There's a rabbi called the Korban Ishe, and he says you don't have to be so calculated. Pour it out comfortably. Why? He says because even if a few drops are going to stay in the tuna or in the yogurt, are you makpid? Are you so strict that, oh, I'm not going to eat it right now if it has those drops? The answer is no. So just like Rav Ovadia said, I'm allowed to put the sifter on the faucet because what if it wasn't there? Would I be makpid to not drink the water? I would still drink it. Same thing over here. If the tuna had a little oil or yogurt had a little bit drops of water, I would still not eat it. No, I would eat it. And therefore, since I'm not makpid, I would be allowed to completely separate it, even, without that idea that we just gave right now. But if you want to be strict, you could do that. But if you don't, you have what to rely on. רבותיי, תזכו למצוות חזק וברוך. We'll continue next week, inshallah. כל טוב, בשורות טובות. Maybe I should let you know from now that next week my flight back to Israel, Be'ezrat Hashem, is on a Wednesday, meaning Tuesday night. I land in Israel Wednesday night, so I'll be on the plane. So if you don't mind, I want to do it next week on Thursday again. Hopefully, I'll won't be jet lagged and I'll be okay. So I'm going to send it in the chat. Please confirm if it works for you, Be'ezrat Hashem. Right, gentlemen, תזכו למצוות, כל טוב. Bye.
Thank you.